Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. We now get into that national opinion poll by Global INFOANALYTIcs on voter impressions on the speeches of President Akufo-Addo and former President John Mahama in the last few days and weeks. Well, joining us for a conversation, we have Musa Dankwa, Executive Director, Global INFOANALYTIcs. Mr. Dankwa, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too.
Thank you for joining the conversation. But just to set the tone for the conversation, I have just the right person. Isaac Kofi is standing by to break it down for us. Ike, so do the breakdown, but start, of course, with the methodology. How did Global INFOANALYTIcs even arrive by these data that they've put together?
Right, so in their recent opinion poll, they had to sample 1,407 respondents across all 16 regions. And they were able to put this together with confidence level of 99 and a margin of error of 3.4 plus or minus. And I want us to go through some of the questions that respondents were asked and then their response to this question. So they were asked a very simple question. Do you think the government is handling the crisis, the economic crisis well? And we have 79% said no, they do not think that government is actually handling the crisis well. We have 20% responding that yes, government is handling the crisis well. 2% are somewhat indifferent about this question that was asked. But if you do further breakdown in terms of the political affiliation of this 1,407 respondents, and then the response they gave with respect to this very question, you realize that NPP respondents, about 68% of them said no, they do not think that the president is handling the economic crisis well. 30% responded that yes, they think that the president is handling the economic crisis well. If you go to that of NDC, the percentage of no now increases if you compare it to that of NPP from 68 now to 87. Just 12% of respondents who are NDC affiliated responded that they think that the president is actually handling the economic crisis well. We are also floating voters, about 81% of them responding no, and then also others 79%. Now, Ben, there's this question that I really want us to tackle. It's very interesting. It says that if you were to tell the government one thing that they could do to help you with the crisis, which of the following would you want them to address urgently? And interesting percentages we see over here. First one is stabilize the cedi against the major currencies. Very, very important because we've seen, World Bank and Bloomberg all tagging the cedi as a worst performing currency globally. And so we have 35% of them responding that, yes, they believe that if you stabilize the cedi, it will give us some sort of, stability in the economy and also reduce taxes on fuel. So as we speak, the price build-up on fuel, taxes alone is about 3 cedis. 27% of the respondents believe that if government is able to reduce taxes on fuel, this will really help to address the situation. Stabilize prices of goods. Yes, 34%. We know that there have been calls for us to use the price stabilization and recovery levy money to actually stabilize price of fuel as well to help consumers in terms of giving them some cushion as far as this current economic situation is concerned. There are calls from certain quarters of the president to step down. Do you support this call? And we have 54% say yes, they support this call for the president to step down. 40% say no, and 6% are indifferent about this question. And if you look at the political affiliation of this question, you can actually see the disaggregation. NPP members, 66% of them say yes, the president should step down. No, the president should step down, shouldn't step down, and 29% said yes, the president should step down. If you look at NDC, if you're comparing the yeses, NDC is about 78%, whilst 18% said no, the president should not step down. Now there's also this question, voters' impression about the president and former President John Dramani Mahama's speech. So they were making comparative analysis between the two speeches given by these presidents, the president and former president. So they were asked, what they were asked about, some of their impressions about the speeches. The first thing is, do you think that it created any inspiration as far as both speeches are concerned? If you look at John Dramani Mahama, 37% said yes, they feel former president's speech gave some inspiration. 12% for current president, President Akufo-Addo, 12% said they feel that his speech gave some form of inspiration. Uninspiring, 25% for Nana-Addo and 9% for John Dramani Mahama. Addressed the issue, 22% said yes, they feel President Akufo-Addo's speech addressed the issue. But if you go to that of John Dramani Mahama, 38% said yes, they feel that his speech actually addressed the issue. Did not address the issue, more or less like having the same percentage if you look at the other way around for NDC. 38% for President Akufo-Addo and then 11% for the former President John Dramani Mahama. Do you support the call for the president to step down? Speech impression. Call for the president to step down. This is I'm sure is address the issues, did not address the issue, and you see the percentages over there. I saw one that I really want us to look at.
Is it about which of the two gave you hope? Is that the one? So I think you would have to. Yes,
this one, right?
That's
yes,
the one.
Yes.
Right.
So if you listen, watched or heard the speeches of His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo and John Dramani Mahama, which of them gave you hope as a Ghanaian? Yeah, let's look at it. No hope, 2%. Both
That's
of them.
no opinion.
No opinion, sorry, 2%. Both of the speeches gave some hope, 11%. Nana Akufo-Addo's speech gave hope, 16%. None of them, 15%. John Dramani Mahama's speech gave hope, 56%. So there you have it. You can see the huge variation between when respondents were asked which of the speeches gave you hope. The variation between Nana Akufo-Addo and then former President John Dramani Mahama.
Isaac Kofi there, always good to have you. Thank you so much for breaking it down for us. But let's come into the studio now with Musa Dankwa, who is Executive Director, Global INFOANALYTICS. First off, even as a sampler or one who conducts such surveys, you must have some expectations when you go. I mean, you want to have a tabula rasa, but you're a human being. You have expectations. Did anything coming out of this latest report surprise you?
No.
Nothing?
No. Because the build-up to this point had been the October poll. The warning signs have been there, and nothing has improved. So we didn't expect anything different from what we knew already in October.
But it appears things are getting progressively worse.
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen that consistently.
Let's talk about those respondents who want the president to step down. It's a call that has come up in recent times. Those who are talking about the fact that there's non-performance and so the president should step down. I remember in previous polls there was some angst against the handling of the economy and all of that. So let's first, maybe even before we get to the president's stepping down based on party affiliations and the rest, let's look at what people's major concerns are. And we took a look at that table. So you would realize that first on the list is the stability of the cedi against major currencies. Then there is the issue of stabilizing the prices of goods, which is second. Then we have reduction on taxes of fuel, third, and others 4%. All of them are tied to inflation. All of them are somewhat tied to the cedi.
Yeah. I mean, it is very clear.
What does this show? What does this even?
I mean, they are telling the government what they should be doing. And they've done none of these, to be very honest with you. Personally, I believe that within the price stabilization levy that we have, the government has ability to control something. If you look at the taxes on fuel, they can introduce a bill in Parliament to cap those taxes. Because they may have made already the windfall that they were expecting in the budget. So how can they release back that windfall to the taxes, for the taxpayer to get a bit of cushion? So I think they are giving the government some kind of direction as to what they should be doing. Sometimes you have to listen to the voters. And I believe that the government will have a listening ear. This is what people are saying. Once we begin to act this way, you'll get a positive response from the voters.
Now let's look at, addressing the economy. These same issues that we speak of, even before we get to the credibility ratings and the rest. We've heard from both, the former president and the current president in recent times. And it is interesting. When you look at that chart that was put forth by, discussed by Isaac Kofi-Addo, 2% had no opinion. But look at the gap. Both of them, shared something that gave hope, 11%. But then when it comes to the president and what he said, 16% versus, or put side by side with the former president, John Mahama, at 56%. Of course, 15% of them had no opinion on the matter, or said none of them actually had given hope. How interesting is that? A sitting president addresses the country a few days after a former president addresses the country, but per this poll, almost 40% less feel the president gave hope, and about 40% more feel the former president, who is not in power, gave hope.
I think this points to one thing, that from the data, you could say that John Mahama may be the president in waiting.
Is that not a bit too early, a bit
I said from the poll.
From the poll?
Yes, you could say.
Yes, but even reading from the poll, even looking at your margin of error and everything.
The gap is so huge. You shouldn't have...
40%.
Yes, you shouldn't have citizens looking up to the position for direction or for hope when they're not in power. They have to work hard on that.
But any opposition is also a government in waiting, so to speak. So wouldn't you say that people are simply venting because maybe the system is not delivering, like on the cedi, on fuel stability in terms of pricing, and on the pricing of general goods like this is reviewed?
It is this kind of feeling that increases the probability of him winning the elections. The less that probability it is, the less likely he will be the president. So once these numbers are looking very bad, it's pointing to one thing. And unless that is reversed, it's going to have these high numbers poll after poll.
And that is also reflective in what we're seeing currently. Do you think government is handling the economic crisis well? And it's stark. It is interesting because 79%, almost a fourth of those you polled are saying no. 20% say yes, and 2% are hanging somewhere in the middle with no opinion.
It's kind of unanimous across general voters, really. They're saying that the government is not doing well at all in handling the crisis. And I think they must listen, and probably listen very well. Once they're able to turn around these numbers, I think the poll numbers will turn in their favor.
Even when you look at the party breakdown when it on the data, you would realize that MPP supporters who think the country is headed in the right direction, or that the crisis is being handled well, even for MPP, only 30% say yes. 68% say no. That I found interesting. For the NDC, 12% say yes, 87% say no. For others, 18% say yes, 81% say no. And then that is for floating voters, and then we have others as well. But for me, my focus is on the MPP, those who claim they are MPP, and the sort of responses they were giving. I found that rather interesting.
I think they are being real. Here, people are not being partisan here. Everybody is feeling the pinch, whether you are an NDC voter, MPP voter, or a floating voter, and they are speaking from how things are happening in this country, and they have to be factual, and that's what they are saying.
Which also reminds me of the Afrobarometer, just to chip it in, because in recent times, they also came out with a report asking people whether the country was headed in the right direction. And it's a similar outcome, because 87.5% said no, the country was not headed in the right direction.
Those poll numbers need to improve for the government. That level is unsustainable.
How can the government do that?
It's about taking actions. You see, I think what people are kind of reflecting in the polls is lack of concrete actions from the government, visible and tangible, ones that really demand the government take steps that they wouldn't otherwise take. And they haven't seen them do that. You agree with me that there has been a call for the government to slash the size of government. That hasn't happened. And for people to trust that you are doing something, this low-hanging fruit has to be harvested.
So let's look at, when you look at the executive summary, so you conducted this poll, and then you looked at, on the call for the economic management team led by the vice president to be replaced following the economic crisis. 78% of respondents supported the call, 18% did not support it, and 4% did not have an opinion. Then, when respondents were asked how they received the president's speech, we've taken a look at that. And then, on whom respondents trusted to better manage the crisis if elected. That's another interesting point I think we could wrap up on.
Okay.
43% of respondents backed John Mahama, 17% Alan Chobating, 14% Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, and 8% Kennedy Ejapong, with 1% backing Dr. Akufo-Addo, who is also of the NDC stock, and 19% preferring someone else. Let's break that down a bit.
Right. Now, the interesting data lies in the party affiliation of how people are voting. Now, majority of Ghanaians or voters that we interviewed think that John Mahama will be the best person to handle this crisis if elected today. That's their view today. Followed by Alan, and then Dr. Bawumia, and then Kennedy Ejapong. If you look at the party affiliation of MPP, how they are voting, 10% of MPP supporters want Mahama to lead.
10% of MPP supporters. Acclaimed MPP supporters.
Yes.
All right.
And then 44% of them said Alan.
Okay.
Then you have 26% saying Bawumia.
Okay, so that's quite a gap.
Yes.
Even from MPP stock,
Yes.
in terms of whom they would want to lead
Absolutely.
the country.
That's where I was.
10% going to John Mahama, but then over 40% to Alan Chobating,
Yes.
and only 26 or so
6%.
percent to the vice president.
Yeah.
Right.
It shows you how the ground is moving within the MPP as who they think should handle this crisis. And that could feed into the primaries of the MPP.
That's an interesting bit because the vice president is head of the economic management team. And so maybe some of the flack that this government is getting is affecting him in terms of his prospects of getting the flag bearership slot.
Now, if you look at when we ask people whether that team should be scrapped, about 78% said yes. And this is majority across all party lines. Most MPP supporters want the EMT to be stood down. Same goes to NDC supporters, floating voters, and other voters. So there's an unanimity across the voting bloc that the EMT should be stood down.
All right, so 30 seconds, final words as we wrap the conversation.
I think the presidency must take these poll numbers very critically. It should influence what goes into the speech and be able to connect very well with voters, because you can't have a speech delivered and not have an impact. So they should be looking at why it wasn't well received. What can we do better next time so that we can really connect to the voters? Thank God this time around there is data that is given in real time. They don't have to wait 6 months down the line. They can fix the problem as and when the data comes out.
All right, and just to give you this background as we go, for those who were polled, 30% were NPP, 31% were NDC, and for floating voters, another 31%, with 7% being others, 1% claiming to be members of the CPP, and 1% for the PPP. So this then definitely gives quite a proportion to both the NDC, the MPP, and of course adding the floating voters. Musa Dankwa, thank you for joining us on this conversation. Musa Dankwa is Executive Director, Global Info Analytics. There's a lot more coming your way on the AM show. Stay with us, we'll be right back.